Good. Good morning, everybody. I want to thank you so much for joining us today on our live with AARP Wisconsin. I hope you're enjoying the weather, and we're very excited to have our guest speaker on today, Lisa Lamkins, who is our Advocacy Director. And before we get started with Lisa, just a couple things with AARP Wisconsin is we are going to be having various online offerings, which includes tech classes, conversations, and also movies for grown-ups. And you could visit our website, which is aarp.org/Wisconsin. And then if you are replaying this video, please feel free to share this on your page. I am Amber Miller, and I'm the Associate State Director with AARP with a focus on outreach. And I'm really excited to have Lisa on today. So Lisa is our Advocacy Director with a focus on federal issues for AARP Wisconsin and has experience of over 30 years, even though she's 19 years old. We love her. Experience in the nonprofit membership organizations, and Lisa has worked extensively on advocacy campaigns, legislative advocacy, grassroots organizing, community education, and program development and implementation. Prior to AARP, Lisa worked with the American Association of College and Nursing and the American Apparel Manufacturers Association. And I've actually had the pleasure of working with Lisa almost a year now and just really impressed with all that she does, not only for AARP, but for the state of Wisconsin. So we're excited to have you on today, Lisa, to talk about all the goodness with advocacy that you're doing in the state of Wisconsin. So welcome. You're our first guest from our staff office. So good to see you.
Well, thanks so much, Amber. I'm really excited to be here on this very cool show that you have started for our members in Wisconsin. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That we appreciate you having advocacy is just so important, not only for our members, but also just our community. So AARP is, often known as being a wise friend and a fierce defender. And I knew that before coming to AARP. So how has AARP shown up as a fierce defender during this COVID pandemic?
Yeah, I think that's a really good description of all the things that AARP does. Since the very beginning of this pandemic, we've done lots of things to help our members navigate these really challenging times. It started a lot with some teletown halls nationally every week, covering a wide variety of topics. And that was kind of the education and the wise friend piece. But we also quickly ramped up to use our advocacy skills to help make sure that older adults were part of the conversations. Congress and states were trying to figure out different policies, different packages, and trying to figure out what they're going to do to help people as this, pandemic evolved. So we were right there fighting to make sure that the needs of older Wisconsinites and older Americans didn't get lost in the shuffle. So I'll highlight a couple of things, and I know we'll get more in depth into some of these, but let me just talk kind of at a high level, some of the key things that I think if AARP hadn't been there, I'm not sure that other people would have stepped up to the plate. One of the very first things, and I know we'll talk about this more, is the stimulus checks, the $1,200 payment to most Americans. And frankly, it was because of AARP that retired people will also be getting this stimulus check. We really wanted to make sure that whether you were working or not working or unemployed or retired, people of all ages are hurting. So AARP fought to make sure that retired people and Social Security beneficiaries also got those stimulus checks. We also tried to make sure that the Social Security and Medicare funds didn't take a hit during this time. There's some delay in businesses paying some of those payroll taxes, which is totally understandable during this crisis. But we made sure it was just a delay and that they have to repay those to make sure the Social Security and the Medicare trust funds are held whole once we get out of all of this.
Oh, and if you're just joining us now, I'm Amber Miller, Associate State Director with AARP, and you are joining AARP Live with our director, our State Director of Advocacy, Lisa Lamkins. So once again, if you just joined us, she is going over talking about some really important things related to the COVID epidemic, including stimulus check that you were just talking about. And so it does sound like AARP really has done quite a bit related to healthcare also during this time. What about the financial security issues of people?
Yeah, well, we know people have really been hurting, especially as we've seen unemployment rise. So at the state level, for example, we asked, and it happened that for people applying for unemployment benefits, that they would waive the 1 week waiting period. We just don't have time right now for people to wait for that relief. We also heard from a lot of our members that they were worried about their retirement funds. We've seen the stock market on a super wild ride, never knowing from one day to the next what's going to happen. And some of our older members were worried about having to take withdrawals from their retirement savings during this time. People maybe know if you're 70 and a half, you have to withdraw money from your retirement account. It's called the required minimum distribution. But last year, Congress passed another bill called the Secure Act, which actually upped that to age 72. The catch is that's only for people who haven't started taking that required minimum distribution yet. So if you're already retired, you're taking that, you would have been required to take it during this pandemic when you absolutely didn't know what the stock market was going to do. So AARP was really successful in making sure that anyone who's currently, supposed to be taking that required minimum distribution, you do not have to take it for 2020. This is a big relief for people who are worried about making their retirement savings stretch during that time.
And that is very important. And I know the telethon halls are so important for our members and just the community in general. And I was lucky enough to sit on a few of them and just listen to, and I know there were a few questions, but the number one, of course, is, that stimulus payment is just really important. Some people did receive it. Some people have yet to receive it. So should people be worried if they have yet to receive their stimulus payment?
Well, I know we've gotten a lot of calls about that, and I just want to sort of put people's fears to rest. I know people are like frantically checking their mailbox for checks or checking your, bank account app to see where your balance is. You are not alone if you have not received this payment yet. There's a little bit of a timeline. Unfortunately, the IRS never set out a timeline, but one of the committees of Congress did. And we have two members of our Wisconsin congressional delegation who are on this committee. It's the House Ways and Means Committee. And they kind of laid out a timeline of how these checks should work. So it all started just about a month ago, right? So the week of April 13th, about 80 million direct deposit payments were made to people who had filed their 2018 and 2019 federal tax returns, right? The IRS had that information, and that's where the checks are coming from. So those direct deposit payments have started. The following week, payments were started to people who had gone onto the IRS and used a new tool they set up and entered their direct deposit information. So those checks started going out. We also started to see them begin to process some of the paper checks. The idea was that those paper checks would go to people with the lowest incomes first, but we haven't really been able to tell if that happened. Towards the end of April is when the deposits started to go to those people who are getting Social Security benefits. Now, the vast majority of people, like 99% of people, get their Social Security payments via direct deposit. And so those started at the end of April, but do not fear if you have not gotten your payment yet. What's happening is they have to match up the databases. They need to match up the Social Security database with the IRS database and get all of that information. Now, people had the opportunity to put their direct deposit, give it directly to the IRS if you haven't filed taxes in a long time. Unfortunately, yesterday was the last day where you could enter that direct deposit information. But do not fear. What's going to happen now is they're really going to ramp up the processing of those paper checks. And there will continue to be monthly batches of both direct deposit and paper checks that will continue to go out until everyone has received their payments. They've actually made payments to about 130 million people so far, which is pretty amazing if you think about it. This bill was only passed at the very end of March. So, we've had 6 weeks of this, and they've been able to make 130 million payments. There are still 20 million people who have not received those checks. So please don't worry if you haven't gotten it yet. They will keep processing them until everybody gets their payment.
And Lisa, I know you do have some tips on payments, and we have a website that we can bring up if people still have not received theirs, and especially because you just mentioned the cutoff date was just yesterday. So very important, and we know the stimulus check is here to help. So if you have not received your stimulus payment and have additional questions, you could go to the website that is scrolling on the bottom, which is irs.gov/get-my-payment. And once again, we're very excited to have Lisa Lamkins here, our State Director for Advocacy with a focus on federal issues. If you have any questions for Lisa that you would like to ask, please post them in the comments section and we will get to them shortly. So Lisa, there are some frequently asked questions that we keep hearing. What about stimulus checks that got sent for people who are deceased? And I know we got a couple questions during our teletown hall meetings. So if you could share a little bit of your insight and your expertise on what people can do for that.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Amber, because we have been getting that question quite a few times. And I guess I just want to make a couple of points about that. We're starting to hear some people say, we've got to make sure that this isn't mismanaged. Look, government can't do anything right. They're sending checks to dead people. I just want people to remember this is not a case of fraud and abuse. This is a case of checks being mailed to 130 million people, or deposits being made to 130 million people within a 6-week time period. The databases that say somebody is deceased matching up with the databases for the IRS and other, the Treasury, it takes time. None of that happens actually, instantaneously. So unfortunately, the IRS has said, if you've received a check for somebody who is deceased, you do have to return that payment amount. They've laid out some specific instructions. And I think we're going to put up some of those instructions on the screen now. If you got a paper check, easy enough. You just write void on the back of the check, you mail it back to the IRS, and just put a little note in there that says why you're returning it. This person is deceased. If you received a direct deposit, or if you got a paper check, or if you're a couple and say, if my spouse happened to pass away, and you received a check for $2,400, you're entitled to your $1,200. But if your spouse has passed away, you need to return their portion of that payment. Again, this is actually pretty easy. You just have to submit a personal check or a money order made payable to the U.S. Treasury. If you write 2020 stimulus payment, and it would be really helpful if you include the Social Security number of the deceased person, and you send that back to the IRS. I'd encourage you to send a brief explanation of the reason that you're returning the payment. That should be relatively quick and easy. Every state has a particular IRS processing center that they've been assigned to. Their regional centers around the country. And I think we're going to put up on the screen now where Wisconsin residents, if you have to return funds for an improper stimulus payment, you can return it to the IRS unit that is in Fresno, California. Again, this is for people who are in Wisconsin. Any payments for the deceased can be sent to this address.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Lisa, because I know that is kind of newer-ish information since some of the teletown hall meetings. Um, another question that I know we get quite a bit is, will the stimulus payment affect people's 2020 personal taxes? Will they have to pay taxes on it? So if you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure, we've actually been asked this question quite a bit as well. And the good news is your stimulus payment does not impact your taxes. You don't have to include that amount on your 2020 taxes, either the state taxes or the federal taxes. It's not going to reduce your refund. It's not going to increase the amount you owe. It really is money to sort of help people through this time. I also just want to mention it doesn't impact your eligibility for certain government programs like Medicaid or food assistance. So getting this money is not going to cause you to be kicked off
Great.
of any assistance programs that you're currently eligible for. So I'm not sure if Amber's video might not be working right now, so I will talk a little bit about some other work that AARP has been doing in this arena. Last week, we had our very first virtual lobby week. Now, I've been at AARP for 25 years and have done lots and lots of meetings with members of Congress. I've never done it by phone and by video. You can see on our screen, there's a picture of me and a picture of our AARP State Director, Sam Wilson, talking actually with members of Congress. We know Congress is getting ready to look at a whole nother huge relief package as we're working through this coronavirus pandemic. So we sat in our living rooms and our kitchens and made sure that they were aware of what AARP was looking for. And so let me just talk a little bit about some of those things. We were pushing for, first and foremost, nursing home protections. We have heard so much about the problems in nursing homes around COVID-19. In fact, I know in Wisconsin, I just read this morning, 43% of the deaths in Wisconsin have been related to nursing home outbreaks. And nursing homes have really struggled with not having enough protective gear for their staff, not having access to testing, not having places to put patients who might have tested positive. We've had real challenges too with families trying to be connected. Early on, nursing homes said, okay, that's it. For the health and safety of our patients, we have to stop any and all visitors. And while understandable, that's a real hardship for older people who are feeling isolated. So AARP has been pushing for things like virtual visitation, making sure nursing homes can afford to buy iPads so that they can have residents can have FaceTime visits with their loved ones. And also making sure that staff in the nursing homes, that staffing is adequate so that people can get help with that kind of stuff. So that was one of our key asks to Congress, is to make sure that nursing home residents are protected.
And the isolation that you were just talking about with the nursing homes is so important. A lot of people have not seen their loved one for months. So I definitely love that AARP is working with nursing homes to try to get some virtual connection. So thank you for sharing that. So we do have one question that we're going to put up. So this is shared by Arlene. So is this information on the IRS website too, what you have been sharing?
Yeah, you can get most of this information at irs.gov. They have a whole frequently asked question section around strictly coronavirus, and almost like most places now, if you go to irs.gov/coronavirus, you can find all sorts of answers to your questions. And they've done a pretty good job about keeping the website updated. One of the things I think the IRS has fallen short on is the ability to reach people in person. And AARP, I just want to add, has actually pushed. We just sent a letter to the Treasury and to the IRS saying, okay, we're coming to the near the end of these stimulus payments now, at least this first round. We need a timeline of when the rest are going to be mailed, how they're going to happen. Will they be direct deposit? Will they be checks? And most importantly, a toll-free hotline needs to be established for people who have questions, or frankly, not everybody has access to a computer or the ability to use one. So while you can get this information online at irs.gov, AARP is pushing for a phone number so people can get help that way too.
No, that's terrific, and thank you for sharing that. So advocacy to me is super exciting. Every day is very different, and not only from what I hear from AARP, but also just from the stories you tell me about how hard you're working every day. So if people want to get involved in advocacy as a possible AARP volunteer, what are ways that they can do that?
Yeah, well, really the power of AARP is the power of our membership and our volunteers. We have over 150 advocacy volunteers around the state of Wisconsin, and they do amazing work every single day. They send emails to elected officials. They do phone calls. They show up and testify. We show up in great big blocks of wearing AARP red shirts, just so that our elected officials know that AARP is watching and paying attention. We want to make sure that the needs of older people, don't get lost in the shuffle. So we always need more folks. And if people are interested, you can go to the website that's on your screen. It's aarp.org/I want to volunteer, and it's the number 2, because we're clever that way.
And I know volunteering in general has changed a little bit because of COVID, but it still sounds like there's opportunities for people to get involved still from home.
Absolutely. And there are lots of different ways. Folks can get involved, again, with emailing their members of Congress. We have sort of a weekly phone call for our volunteers where we give them action steps and different things they can do. And really the part of advocacy that's important, and the part that I like, is ultimately what we're pushing for are things that are going to make life better for people age 50 plus. So sometimes we'll work on something and there's a new program that happens, and then the next part is educating people about it, is letting people know there are new benefits. Let me give you one quick example, Amber.
Yes, please.
One of the things we worked on in our lobby week was to make sure that people could use their food share benefits for online grocery ordering. Most states have prohibited that because you can't pay for fees with your food share. And we were successful. Wisconsin's going to start a pilot program and will allow people who get those benefits, which includes about 170,000
Wow,
senior households who get those benefits, and over
great.
500,000 people in the state of Wisconsin who can now order groceries online and stay safer by not going out to the grocery store. Now we need to let people know about that. And that's where our volunteers come in. They go to fairs and exhibits and really are the face of AARP in their communities every day. We can't do the work without them. And we'd love to have more people join us.
Correct. Yeah, definitely our volunteers. We wouldn't be able to do what we could do without their time and commitment to help not just AARP but their community. And then also with regards, we do have one question from Carol. So she's continually getting an error message on the stimulus check. My assumption is she might be checking their website. What else could she do, Lisa?
Well, Carol, it looks like in her message, she hit on one of the key tips. So this Get My Payment tool that's on the IRS website is not perfect. One of the key things we're hearing when people get that error message, it's because they have not entered the address exactly as it was the last time they had a federal tax return. So for example, if you live at 123 Main Street, if you type in just the abbreviation ST on the Get My Payment tool, but the last time you filed your taxes, you had written out street, that it's not a match and you come back with an error. One suggestion is if people are going to check the Get My Payment tool, you should really only check it one time a day. If you check it multiple times, you're just going to get frustrated. They're still doing the database matches, and so they only do those updates once a day, and it's very possible that the update has not gone through yet. Again, they're matching up your Social Security database with the IRS database, and that is taking time. I hate to say it, Carol, keep checking once a day. If after a while you still haven't gotten anything, we are encouraging people to contact their member of Congress and ask for help with their constituent services person. Again, 20 million people still haven't gotten their payments. They're still trying to work that out. So it's not a terrific answer, but we will make sure that every single person who is eligible for those will get that payment.
Great. Yeah, thank you. And Carol, definitely hang in there. And Lisa, thank you for those tidbits of information. If you have a question for Lisa, you could please post it in the comments. And while we're waiting, I also would like to talk about one of our new initiatives through AARP, which is called Community Connections. And the website is right there. Community Connections gives you resources and information about a couple programs. One is local food pantries. They also have how to exercise from home, yoga, meditation, and also one of my favorite programs, which is called AARP Friendly Voice. And so what that does is you could actually request a call from one of our trained volunteers to call you. It could be once, it could be a couple times a week, and it's just to hear a friendly voice. It's somebody to check on you. It's somebody to have a short conversation with. But what's nice is this program is here. It's brand new. It's about a month old, but has just, I think, given people a lot of hope and opportunity of getting that daily check-in. So if you go to AARP Community Connections, all the information I just talked about is there. It's one of my favorite programs, and they actually also added a nutrition part of it where you could plug in what items you have in your cupboard or your fridge, and it will give you a recipe for it. So definitely a good way to utilize some of the food that you might already have. And as Lisa was stating, that you can now use SNAP benefits to do some online grocery shopping. Definitely check out our online class calendar at aarp.org/Wisconsin. Last week, we had a live workshop on how to use your smartphone and what apps to use to do online grocery shopping. And it was really great. I learned actually a couple things too, but it'll give you kind of a guidance on, okay, I can use my SNAP benefits, but I don't even know how to do online grocery shopping and how can I maneuver that. So definitely a really great resource to use. So Lisa, in wrapping up, is there any final comments that you would like to share about advocacy, about AARP in general, and what we're doing for our community?
I think one of the things, and people often don't necessarily remember that AARP is fighting for them not only at the federal level, but at the state level as well. We've been continuing to push a lot of these things at the state level. In fact, we were successful in getting the state just yesterday, I think, to announce that they're going to start publicly announcing the names of nursing homes where there has been a COVID infection. So we are working for you around the clock. Again, we can't do it without our fantastic members and our fantastic volunteers. So we would love to have you. And I think you'll find, we have a lot of our advocacy volunteers have actually volunteered for the Friendly Voices program that you were just talking about, Amber. There are lots of opportunities once you get to AARP. And one of the things you'll find is that we all work together closely, doing good things, and importantly, having a lot of fun while we do it.
Absolutely. And Lisa, before we end today's show, we got one more question, which is, do you foresee any additional stimulus checks in the future?
Well, I will let you know that that is one thing that AARP is actually pushing for. We know the sort of one-time payment helped, but it's not enough. And even as we see states ease into reopening, a lot of the forecasts are for longer-term recessions. So we are actually pushing for another round of stimulus checks, and actually looking, how we can sort of sustain some of this. So
Great.
fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. And we did receive and this is a great question. So, how do I access a prior broadcast using your phone? So, Live with AARP Wisconsin is a weekly show. It runs every Thursday, starting around 11 Central, goes to about 11:30. Right now, you can go if you're on Facebook on your phone. You go to the AARP Wisconsin page, and then you can click on videos. And this is, I believe, our fourth broadcast. So you can view them all there on the Facebook page. And then once again, this video broadcast, we would love for you to share it on your page, and especially if you know somebody who has questions still about stimulus checks, which is so important, and benefits in general. But AARP is here to support you every step of the way. We want to hear from you. So if you have additional questions or comments, you can reach us through our Facebook page in the Messenger. But Lisa, I want to thank you so much. This was super informative. And I know the stimulus check, once again, 20 million people still have not received them. So the information you gave today is extremely helpful. So thank you so much. And I want to thank you guys so much for joining us today through AARP Live. Next Thursday and the next couple Thursdays, please join us at 11 a.m. And we want to thank you again for joining us. And if you have any questions, once again, please contact us through our Facebook page. Otherwise, please enjoy your day and stay safe.